Hi, this is Kevin, and I am with the Albuquerque Coordinated Resource Guide. I wanted to present a concept for system design that I think is really important, not just in Albuquerque, but anywhere. And what it does is it fleshes out this concept of a continuum of service connection and some specific strategies to accomplish it. So, first of all, a continuum of service connection pertains to a whole linking of different stages that somebody must go through in order to be able to get to a service that they like and that retains them. But right now in our system we have a lot of disconnection, and so in a fundamental statement, a system that is disconnected will not be able to take people that are experiencing disconnected to retained service. So you have to be able to have a connected, integrated system to be able to move people into services. So what I'm going to do is talk about some strategies to be able to start accomplishing that, and ways to just start thinking about this differently than we have been. So to start with, I wanted to give you a sense of some of these stages of connection that are represented in this concept. So first of all, motivation. Currently in our system, when we interact with motivation, what we often do is we don't really look for indicators of how much a person wants to proceed with something. And the tool that we want to use in this instance is called stages of change. Stages of change help somebody evaluate if their costs of change are much higher than the benefit of change according to that person's perception. So right now in our system, we often don't even think about this, and we assume that they're going to be motivated, and we spend disproportionate amount of time with the wrong kind of interaction strategy with them. Instead of helping the person think about all the benefits to change, we just sort of assume that they will change, and we keep spending time with them in that same manner. In terms of capacity, our current system sometimes evaluates a person's capacity to self-navigate and to, accomplish certain kinds of functions and tasks in their lives. But a lot of times we will give guidance to somebody with maybe a low amount of capacity, and we don't really connect them to people that can help guide them, for example, to case managers or service workers that do navigation. And so we wrongly assess their capacity, and they don't really go very far because we're not connecting them in a meaningful way that's going to help them progress. Locating information, that right now in our system is kind of broken in the sense that we assume that people will know where to get good, accurate information about available services, and so we just like looking at the social networks, looking at service provider networks. When a person, it's sort of assumed that a person can find connection to services and information about them, but it's not that simple. I've done a survey myself in Albuquerque, and I realized from doing that people don't know where to go on the internet. They don't know where to go to find meaningful services that are relevant to them. Informing is looking at the resources that we currently have, and sort of what happens in informing in our system right now is that they may not necessarily have information, whether it's an online resource guide or a text platform. We don't really have that quite yet, or it's just like a card of informing people of services. We don't have information that quickly guides people to the available services or the most quality services. And so what happens is you have to sort through all this information. It's difficult with the given information to try to find what you need. And we have a whole bunch of duplication of informing services. We have, I think, like 15 different resource guides of a lot of information that's out of date. So that's sort of pertains to our current state of informing. Problem solving and advocacy. In Albuquerque right now, what happens a lot of times is that there's system gaps in the resources that we have, and we don't really have people that sit with somebody and help them think about how to connect to services, even though it looks like maybe there's nothing there for them. Maybe how to navigate wait lists, or how to find services that really fit their situation. So that takes some thinking and problem solving, and we don't sit down a lot of times and do that. And we do it to some degree, but we also advocate, I know, but there's ways where we, because of our lack of advocation, people just don't get connected to services. So this is a really critical stage right here, problem solving and advocacy. In terms of accessing, this really speaks to when you really have gone through all these prior stages and you need to make a call or use some transportation to get to the service. If you don't have those kinds of tools or resources, then that could sort of make all your prior effort for naught, or really prohibit or delay your access of a service. We definitely struggle with access to phones, and phones often get stolen or lost. And we also have a lot of difficulty accessing transportation in a timely way to be able to get people to services. Service retention, I think that really speaks in our system. Some of the difficulties that we have with service retention is that we don't have services that are necessarily have good availability. We sometimes don't have services that have sort of a lot of best practices, so they're serving clients in a quality way, and so people sort of bounce out of these services. So instead of focusing on the problems anymore, what I want to focus on is looking at connecting all these things in a good and positive and meaningful way. So the best way to start interconnecting all these stages and doing it well is to look at it from a systems point of view. So looking at it from a systems point of view, first is going to be looking at how do we incentivize all the players, all the actors in our system to begin to start assessing appropriately, because obviously within this continuum there's a lot of skill sets. It's not just information, it's a lot of skill sets. So how do we incentivize those skill sets to become more developed? So one of the things that I'm a fan of, and I want your feedback on, is figuring out how can we go to funders, how do we go to organizations, and help them think about incentivizing linking people together, whether it's navigators or organizations or subsystems. And so it really incentivizes warm handoffs and good assessing and making sure that people get connected efficiently all the way to service retention. So another sort of example of a system-wide incentive is to look at when people are given an opportunity to connect to something, say at any one of these given stages, and if we were to measure how many times we tried to connect them, but versus how many times they actually got connected, and if we measured at different points along this continuum, we would start to find out, if we measured how many attempts we made versus connection, we would start to see, well, maybe in a particular stage or stages, that's the stage where the recidivism happens, and that's what these red arrows are. So we want to try to measure where that's happening and inform and drive our decisions about where to increase our training system-wide, and where to increase our strategies for interconnecting the way that we guide people. And then I just wanted to speak real briefly about leverage points. I think with the metrics, that does speak to leverage points, but there's other things that are really key, and leverage points means that we dive into different things like funding motivation, and maybe places where there's a significant amount of recidivism, like say a particular service or agency gets a lot of contact with clients, but their training does not encourage them to be linking up with other downstream stages of connection. So that's sort of another system strategy there. All right, I want to just collaborate on this idea. It's a new concept. It probably needs refinement. I want your guys' feedback on how we do a better job of designing a system of connection that looks at all of these things in an interconnected way, instead of making decisions in our own silos, just at our desk in our organization, sort of comes across my desk and I get it off my desk, to a lot broader, more collaborative kind of atmosphere over this. So please give me your feedback. If you would like to send me some feedback, go give me an email at abqcrg@gmail.com, and I'll also put a link in this video. If you want to scroll down below, I'll put a link to this spreadsheet, so you can have that to show to other people. Thank you so much for listening, and appreciate your feedback.